Welcome to CS284 Windows Network Security. I am your instructor, Robert McMillen, and we are in our final module, Module 9, where we're going to talk about authentication. In authentication, it's basically the confirmation and the verification of one's identity. So there are several different authentication methods: something you know, something you have, and something you are, which we will go into here. Let's talk for a moment about what you know. A password is something that you know. Of course, it is limited by human memory and convenience. Sometimes we create passwords that are so complex that we have to write them down, and once we write them down, then they become vulnerable as well. So there are attacks to social engineering attacks, where someone will pretend to be an employee of a company, call up, and try to socially engineer the password out of maybe an IT administrator. There's also capturing or resetting a password, and you can capture it by using a brute force attack or a man-in-the-middle attack, or cracking the password using various different tools such as pwdump, Kane, or John the Ripper. And I've used John the Ripper before, for testing purposes, of course. And basically, it just goes in and tries to put in every type of password possible to crack the password. So lots of different ways to do that. And you can use a password database, a database that has like every conceivable way of putting together letters and number combinations, and then using that to try to do a brute force attack to try to guess the password. Defenses make the password long, at least 8 characters. Use other types of characters besides just letters. Use uppercase as well. And of course, have these policies pushed out so people are required to use these more complex passwords. Another way is to use KeePass, which basically allows the user to have a single password that then links to multiple complex passwords. So that way they don't end up having to keep a complex password or multiple ones written down on pieces of paper which can get lost or compromised. So what you have, that part of authentication and verification could be a token or a card. So tokens are rotating numbers, one-time passcodes. Typically, a device like a card will have the first 10 or 12 characters rotate every minute, and then you have the second part of the password will be something that you already know. You put those two together, and there is a time piece to this where the server is synced to the same time as the cards themselves, and these cards will put out the same numbers, the same seemingly random numbers at the same time that the server will, so they'll both be lined up. And then when you type in that number and that password, then you get connected. So there are smart cards as well, and they have a unique chip that when you get close to your computer and then you type in your password along with it, then that will give you access. And then there's software authentication packages as well. A couple of those are Blizzard and Google, which give you the feel of a token or a card, but it's software based. So here's some of the tokens and cards that are out there. The one in the upper left, the crypto card, is going to have this rotating number that you need to type in. There's also a rotating number in this crypto card, the smaller device as well. On the right hand side, you see the crypto card with the built-in RFID chip on it, and then there's a USB one at the very top, which can be used to plug into a computer, which will be the something you have piece of your authentication. So what you are is the third part, and that could be biometrics. So there's standard, which is a fingerprint, a face. You could use facial recognition, which a lot of the tablets are now doing with the cameras. You could use a hand. Sometimes even bone scanners are used inside the hands because of their uniqueness. There's eye scanners. And of course, you have to look at the cost of implementation for doing it at all the locations. So if you have a lot of locations and you have something like a bone scanner, then it might be a little bit too expensive to use. But on the other hand, fingerprint scanners are very cheap, but they're also easy to defeat as well. So you have to look at some of these different cost versus security levels that are out there. For instance, I don't have a fingerprint at all. I had an accident, or actually an allergic reaction, which just burned the fingerprints right off of my fingers. So for me, a fingerprint card reader doesn't have it. And there's actually a larger percentage than people realize that just flat out don't have fingerprints. So those won't work for me. So eye scanners or hand bone scanners or facial recognition, that would work just fine. Behavioral, you've got keystroke, voice, cadence, and patterns. So there's a lot of that where you have to speak into a microphone and the computer will grab the cadence and the patterns of your voice, and that will be used for the behavioral part of biometrics. And that's actually a very good way of doing it. Of course, if you do have a recording of someone, then that could defeat some behavioral products. And then you've got software, which requires integration, with that as well. So you have to look at the cost of that kind of thing. And then there's cognitive recognition of events or images, draws upon personal experience. So cognitive would be another type of biometrics that's used. That's an up and coming one that could be used. Of course, that was something that was used in various wars for people to recognize whether or not someone was on the same side as you. You would mention events that maybe somebody from your country would really only know. So if you use these all together, you can increase your security. You've got increased authentication by using more than one method. I would recommend at least using two. If you can, use three if it doesn't cause too many interferences with the employees trying to get their work done, then you could try using three, but two is usually the accepted standard. So a password and a token, a password and a fingerprint, a password and a token and a fingerprint. It might be a little bit too much, but it definitely adds to the security. So that is some different authentication. Of course, there's a chapter on authentication which goes even further into all these different things and touches on some other subjects as well. And that is the end of our Module 9 and the end of our lecture series on CS284 Windows Network Security. I've been your instructor, Robert McMillen.